Okay, so we just did module 1, and I am going to give you some exercises at the end of this, but I want to go over a couple of these terms because sometimes I feel like people can get a little bit confused when it comes to narcissism. So everybody has narcissistic traits. We all carry these traits. Sometimes it's because you're wanting to be liked, sometimes it's out of protection, but there is a difference between somebody who is narcissistic versus somebody who has NPD. And the best way to understand that and the best way to differentiate the two is if a person does not have the ability to reflect, if they don't ever say to themselves, maybe I am narcissistic, maybe I am, that is a pretty good indication that they are. So somebody like you, for instance, you've probably asked yourself the question, or you have Googled, am I narcissistic? That is a key indicator that you are not, because you are having the ability to self-reflect. So the first time I started understanding narcissism, I confronted the person that I was with at the time, and I said, I think that, you're really narcissistic. Because this was back whenever it first came out. A lot of people like to use this term a lot. And you kind of have to be careful with it because, again, it's just a form of protection. But when I told this person that maybe they might be, they said, absolutely not, I'm not. And they were determined that they did not have these traits when they were literally checking every box whenever I was trying to have a conversation with them. So I want to kind of go over some of the terms, because if you're new to narcissism or you're learning about this, you may not know. So I've got a computer in front of me. I got a couple of notes, and I want to go over these so that you understand whenever it's happening to you. So the first one's going to be gaslighting. And a really good example of this is, let's say you found text messages on maybe a family iPad, and you see the iPad and it's got your spouse talking to another person, and you confront them about those things. They will do anything they can to deny that it's happening. They will make up stories. They will tell you that you're crazy. They will say that they're talking to them about something else, and they will make you doubt what you know is true. So that is a form of gaslighting. Then we have guilt tripping. So I find that guilt tripping is, to me, it goes hand in hand with silent treatment. So if somebody, if you confront somebody about something that they've done, instead of communicating with you or having the conversation, they will go quiet and ignore you. That to me is a form of guilt tripping. Or they will say something that makes you feel bad. So I find this happens a lot with financial abuse, because a lot of women don't realize that they are being financially abused. Let's say you go to the grocery store and you purchase groceries, and maybe you get $20 out for yourself, and they will make you feel absolutely horrible about getting that $20 out. So it's just little things like that. So that's a form of guilt tripping or silent treatment. And then we have emotional withdrawal. This is if your spouse and you are kind of on the rocks, and they keep their answers really short and simple. There's no affection. Maybe, y'all are used to cooking in the kitchen together and having conversations, and there's a huge emotional disconnect there. Maybe they just stay in the living room and watch TV. That, and don't get this confused. We're human beings. We like to rest. We like to watch TV. Our husbands like watching sports. But when you communicate to somebody that maybe they're doing something that hurts you, and instead of having those conversations, instead of making an effort to do the things that maybe you've asked them to do, they completely emotionally disconnect. That's what that means. Then we have passive aggressive. This is a really great one. So passive aggressive is interesting when you're living with somebody who is incredibly manipulative or narcissistic. So let's say they have figured out something that really, really bothers you, and they will say things under their breath. This is a form of what I like to call dog whistling. So if me and my spouse get into an argument about something, and they know that there's things that really hit a nerve with me, instead of communicating it like normal people and talking about it face to face, they will walk off and subtly say it under their breath. Enough to where you can hear them, but not enough to where you even want to have this conversation. And I find that passive aggressive behavior, like dog whistling, is one of the biggest triggers, because it's almost like they're hiding, but they're trying to make sure that you react. So be really careful about the dog whistling and the passive aggressive behavior, because that always gets under people's skin. And if they're doing this often, that's their MO. That's what they like to use. So then we have love bombing and devaluation. Love bombing is when you've gotten into an argument, you haven't talked for a couple of weeks, and they know there's something that you need, so they will use that as a way to get your attention. They will go take you shopping, or they will buy you something that you needed for your job, or if there's something that you needed around the house that makes your life a little bit easier, they will go out and buy that. And they will use that almost like a dangling carrot. So they're trying to give you all of these things, and then once you get all of those things, if you don't do exactly what they want, which in my case and what I've experienced is usually some type of sexual interaction, if you don't do exactly what they want, then they will devalue you, and they will make you feel like you're worthless, and they will completely pull back and not give you the money that you need, buy you the things that you need. It's almost like they're bombing you with love and gifts, and then they pull it way back to make you feel like you're unworthy. Then we have chronic invalidation. You're having a conversation with your spouse, and you're talking about something that you're really, really passionate about, or maybe you have received a certification. Maybe you've gone and you're working on something for a job, you're trying to get better at something, and you receive a certification, and you're really proud of yourself. And they don't congratulate you or acknowledge that you've done it. Or if they see you working really, really hard and they know that you're doing something, they will kind of make it out to be that you're not doing enough. Those are little ways of chronic invalidation and making you feel like nothing that you ever do is good enough. Then we have spiritual manipulation. This is one that I dealt with early on, where this person would go get the Bible and find scripture that fit their needs. And this is something that is used a lot more than you realize. But whenever people are trying to find things to fit to benefit their, whatever their point of view is, that is spiritual manipulation. And I find that there are a lot of people that are spiritual that will actually use this to their advantage. So maybe they're doing a lot of work on themselves, or doing a lot of shadow work, and then they make you feel guilty because you're not doing the shadow work, or you're not doing, whatever it is that they're doing. They have this idea that they are above you and better than you. So that's a form of spiritual manipulation. So we have talked about a little bit of those. We have the idealize, which is the love bombing, devaluing you, which is, they give you a whole lot and then they pull way back. And then we have the discard, which is they completely pretend that you don't exist, or they make you feel like you're completely unworthy, or it's almost like you feel like they are breaking up with you or discarding you completely and moving on to the next thing. Maybe they have a new supply, maybe they have a new girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever it might be. That is a form of discarding. And then hoovering, which is kind of like love bombing, is when they really start to turn on the charm and they start to give you nice gifts, and they talk about how, which I like to call future faking. They will say, hey, I know that you needed this. They'll remember of something that you needed, and they'll say, hey, what if we go get this? So this has been done to me quite a bit. I needed a computer for work for years, and they would say, hey, well, let's go look at computers today. But they would never actually follow through with what they said they were going to do. And then the last four that I want to talk about are fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. So fight, obviously, is whenever you want to get in a fight, you want to argue, you want to, it's almost like you are in this hustle mentality. You have to do everything yourself. You're hyper independent. That is a form of fight. Then we have flight, is when you dip, you take off. You get in an argument, and instead of having the conversation, you want to leave the house and get out and get away, maybe go drive in your car. And then we have freeze, which is when you completely shut down and disassociate. And then we have fawn, which is people pleasing and making yourself feel small. So I wanted to go over a couple of those just so you understand whenever I talk about them in the module and you're aware. And obviously I could go into more detail with these, but I just wanted to go over those really quick so that you're aware what those words mean when you hear me talk about them in future modules. So let's move on to the next part.